5 years with Jake felt like building a dream together. I met him when I was already established in my career while he was struggling financially with big entrepreneurial dreams. I supported him emotionally, financially, and professionally, never expecting the day would come when he would leave me for such a ridiculous reason. The betrayal cut deep, but what Jake forgot in his rush to greener pastures was one crucial detail that would turn everything around. I still remember the day I met Jake as clearly as if it happened yesterday. It was a chilly autumn morning at Riverside Coffee, my favorite spot to work remotely. I had just been promoted to senior marketing director at my firm, and I was celebrating with a fancy latte and pastry. Jake was working behind the counter, his warm smile instantly making me feel welcome. Unlike the other baristas who seemed bored with their jobs, Jake had this spark in his eyes, an energy that was contagious. When he served my coffee, he asked about the work I was doing on my laptop. That simple question led to a 2-hour conversation during his break about marketing strategies, business growth, and his dream of starting his own tech company. Jake had graduated with a business degree, but was struggling to find meaningful work in his field. The coffee shop job was just a temporary solution to pay bills while he networked and developed his business plan. There was something refreshingly honest about his ambition. Unlike others who just talked about dreams, Jake had detailed plans and innovative ideas. I found myself offering advice from my experience in marketing, and he soaked up every word with genuine appreciation. We exchanged numbers that day, supposedly for professional networking. But within a week, we were texting constantly, and he asked me out to dinner. Our first date lasted until the restaurant closed, and we continued talking in my car for hours afterward. The connection was immediate and powerful. Over the next few months, our relationship blossomed quickly. Jake was attentive, passionate, and seemed to value everything about me. He would surprise me with thoughtful gifts that showed he truly listened when I talked. When I mentioned missing the strawberry pies my grandmother used to make, he spent an entire weekend teaching himself to bake one from scratch. 8 months into our relationship, my lease was ending, and Jake suggested we move in together. It made perfect sense at the time. We were practically living together already, spending every night at either my apartment or his shared living space with roommates. I had been saving for a down payment on a house, and with my good credit and stable income, I was pre-approved for a mortgage. We found a beautiful 3-bedroom craftsman-style home in a quiet neighborhood. The moment we walked in, I knew it was the one. Jake agreed it was perfect, but there was an awkward conversation about finances. Given my stronger financial position, we decided the house would be in my name with Jake, contributing what he could toward monthly expenses. He promised that once his business took off, we would adjust the arrangement to be more equitable. The first few months of living together were blissful. We spent weekends fixing up the house, painting walls, planting a small garden, and making it truly ours. Jake would cook dinner while I worked late, and I would help him refine his business plans in the evenings. We were a team supporting each other in every way. Then 3 months after we moved in, disaster struck. The marketing agency Jake had recently joined announced layoffs, and he was among the first to go, having been the most recent hire. I came home to find him sitting at the kitchen table, staring blankly at his termination letter, his face a mixture of shock and humiliation. Without hesitation, I told him not to worry about the bills. This was his opportunity to focus on launching his business. I had enough savings and income to cover our expenses for a while, and I believed in his vision. The relief and gratitude in his eyes that night made me feel like I had made the right choice. Jake hugged me tightly and promised he would make it up to me one day. Over the next year, I supported Jake completely while he built his company from scratch. I introduced him to valuable contacts from my professional network, helped him refine his business pitch, and even invested some of my personal savings to help him get started. When he needed a new laptop for development work, I bought it as a gift. When he needed a professional wardrobe for investor meetings, I took him shopping. I believed in him completely, and it felt good to be the foundation he could build upon. The company Next Level Tech was Jake's dream. It was a software platform designed to help small businesses optimize their operations through artificial intelligence. The concept was innovative, and with my marketing expertise helping shape his pitch, he managed to secure a small round of seed funding from an angel investor. We celebrated that night with champagne and dreams of the future. Jake talked about how we would travel the world once the company took off, buy a vacation home by the beach, start a family. I felt proud watching him so animated and confident, knowing I had played a part in making it possible. Looking back, I should have noticed the subtle changes beginning even then. That night, after all his talk of our future, he got a call from a business contact and spent 2 hours on the phone, completely forgetting our celebration. I went to bed alone, telling myself it was part of supporting an entrepreneur. The first of many nights I would make that same excuse. As Jake became more involved in building his company, he started missing dinner dates and weekend plans. When I mentioned it, he would apologize profusely, explaining how critical this stage was for the business. I understood and tried to be patient, adjusting my expectations and schedule to accommodate his increasingly unpredictable hours. Still, I cherished the moments we did have together. When Jake talked about his progress, his eyes would light up with the same passion that had first attracted me to him. He would bring me small gifts occasionally to apologize for his absence, and we would reconnect, reminding me why I continued to support his journey. I believed we were building something meaningful together, both his company and our relationship. The sacrifices seemed temporary and worthwhile for the future we had planned. But looking back now, I realize I missed the early warning signs that our relationship was beginning to shift in a troubling direction. The canceled plans became more frequent, his apologies less sincere. And increasingly, when we were together, the conversation revolved entirely around his business, with little interest in my day or my work. The balance was tipping, but I was too invested to see it clearly. As Next Level Tech secured its first substantial investment round of $500,000, I noticed Jake changing in ways that went beyond just being busy. He started dressing differently, trading his casual style for expensive designer clothes. He joined an exclusive fitness club downtown instead of our local gym. Small changes at first, but they accumulated quickly. I was genuinely happy for his success, but something felt off about the way he carried himself around me. There was a new edge to his voice when he talked about my job, which I had once been proud of. Still doing the same thing at the same company, he asked one night, his tone making it sound like a character flaw, rather than the stability that had supported us both. One evening, I prepared a special dinner to celebrate 6 months since his first funding round, hoping for some quality time together. Jake arrived 2 hours late, barely apologized, and spent most of the meal checking emails. When I expressed disappointment, he looked up at me with an expression I had never seen before, a mixture of irritation and something close to disdain. "The business is at a critical stage, Alexa." "I thought you understood that," he said, as if I was being unreasonable for wanting a single evening of his attention. "My investors do not work 9 to 5, and neither can I if I want to succeed." That night marked a turning point. The considerate, grateful partner who had once valued my support now seemed to view it as an entitlement, or worse, a burden. The dynamic between us shifted noticeably. Jake started questioning my choices, from the way I dressed to how I spent my free time. My career, which had once impressed him, became the target of subtle criticisms. "You could be doing so much more if you took some risks," he would say conveniently, forgetting that my stable income had given him the freedom to take his own risks. The financial discussions became particularly tense. As his company started generating some revenue, Jake suggested we revisit our financial arrangement. "I think I should be building equity in the house," he said casually one morning. "After all, I am paying toward the mortgage now." I reminded him gently that his contributions barely covered utilities, and the mortgage, property taxes, insurance, and maintenance all came from my account. The conversation ended abruptly when he received a call from an investor and left the room, but the uncomfortable feeling lingered. Our annual beach vacation, a tradition since our first year together, became another casualty. 2 days before we were supposed to leave, Jake announced he could not possibly get away because of an important investor meeting. "You could still go," he offered, as if that was an acceptable solution to breaking our plans. I canceled everything and spent that week alone in our house, wondering what had happened to the man who once prioritized our relationship. Despite these disappointments, I continued adjusting, making excuses, and supporting Jake. I attended his networking events as the perfect supportive girlfriend, making conversation with investors and potential partners. I listened to his business challenges each night, offering solutions and encouragement. I managed our home entirely by myself, creating a peaceful space for him to return to after his stressful days. But the gulf between us widened. Jake started going out more with his new business friends, attending industry parties and dinners where I was not invited. "Just business talk, you would be bored," he would say dismissively. He started keeping his phone face down and would step outside to take certain calls. The situation deteriorated further when Next Level Tech received another round of investment, this time a substantial $2 million. Jake came home that night with an expensive bottle of champagne, more animated than I had seen him in months. As we celebrated, I thought perhaps things would improve now that some of the financial pressure had eased. Instead, the success only accelerated the changes in him. Jake hired an executive assistant, a recent business school graduate named Sophia, who seemed to know more about his schedule than I did. He mentioned her name constantly, praising her efficiency and insights into the business. One evening at a rare dinner together, Jake actually criticized my appearance in front of his new business partners. "Alexa still shops at department stores," he said with a laugh that made my cheeks burn. "I keep telling her she needs to upgrade her style, now that we are moving in different circles." The others chuckled while I sat there humiliated and confused. This was not the man I had fallen in love with. A week later, while doing laundry, I found a receipt in his pocket for a dinner at an expensive restaurant on a night he had told me he was working late at the office. I told myself it was probably a business meeting, but the seed of doubt was planted. That doubt grew when I accidentally glimpsed a text message on his phone while he was in the shower. It was from Sophia, and while the content was not explicitly romantic, the familiarity of "cannot wait to see you tomorrow" and a winking emoji made my stomach churn. When I tried to discuss it with Jake, he exploded with anger. "Are you spying on me now? Checking my phone? This is exactly why I need space from you. You do not trust me to build my company without your constant surveillance." His reaction was so disproportionate that it left me speechless. I had simply asked about a text message I had seen by chance, and he had turned it into an accusation about my character. After that fight, Jake started coming home even later, sometimes not until after I had gone to bed. Our conversations became superficial when we had them at all. The tension in our home became unbearable. The house that we had lovingly made our own now felt like a battleground of silent treatments and cold shoulders. I tried everything to improve the situation. I suggested couples counseling, which he dismissed as pop psychology nonsense. I planned special evenings at home, which he often missed or cut short. I even tried giving him more space, hoping that less pressure would help him remember what we once had. Nothing worked. Jake continued to pull away, spending more time at the office or at business dinners. The few evenings he was home, he would sit silently on his laptop, barely acknowledging my presence. Our intimacy had all but disappeared. The breaking point came when I tried to surprise him with concert tickets to see his favorite band. Instead of appreciation, he reacted with annoyance. "I cannot just drop everything for a concert, Alexa. I have responsibilities now. Maybe you should ask one of your friends since you have so much free time." That night, after another silent dinner, Jake announced that he needed space to think and would be sleeping in the guest room. As I lay alone in our bed, tears streaming down my face, I wondered how we had gone from planning a future together to living like strangers under the same roof. The man sleeping in the next room bore little resemblance to the grateful, loving person who had once looked at me with such admiration and affection. What I did not know then was that the worst was yet to come. 3 weeks of awkward coexistence followed with Jake and I, barely speaking beyond necessary household logistics. I walked on eggshells in my own home, desperately hoping that whatever phase Jake was going through would pass. I still loved him, and wanted to believe that the sweet, ambitious man I had fallen for was still somewhere inside the cold, dismissive stranger he had become. I decided to make one last effort to reconnect. I took a day off work to prepare his favorite meal, a complex beef bourguignon that took hours to simmer properly. I set the table with candles, and our best dinnerware, opened a bottle of wine to breathe, and even bought a new dress for the occasion. This would be our fresh start, I told myself. A chance to remember what we meant to each other before success and ambition had created this chasm between us. I texted Jake to make sure he would be home for dinner, and he replied with a simple, "Yes." My heart lifted at the prospect of a real conversation after weeks of silence. 7 o'clock came and went. By 8, the carefully prepared meal was growing cold. By 9, I had changed out of my new dress back into comfortable clothes, my makeup smudged from frustrated tears. At 10:30, I heard his key in the door. Jake walked in, looking surprised to see me still awake. He wore an expensive new suit I had never seen before, and the unmistakable scent of unfamiliar perfume clung to his collar. My stomach dropped as I realized he had completely forgotten our dinner plans. "Where have you been?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "I texted you about dinner." I took the day off work to cook for us. He frowned, pulling out his phone. Oh, right. Sorry, got caught up in meetings. We can reheat it tomorrow. The casual dismissal of my effort was the final straw. Jake, what is happening to us? You sleep in another room, you are never home, and when you are, you barely speak to me. Is there someone else? Just tell me the truth. Jake looked at me for a long moment, then sighed heavily. He loosened his tie and sat down on our couch, suddenly looking tired. We need to talk, Alexa. My heart raced as I sat across from him, bracing myself for whatever was coming. This is not working anymore, he said flatly. We have grown apart. We want different things now. What different things? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. We built a life together. We talked about marriage, children. What changed? Jake ran a hand through his expertly styled hair. I have changed. My world has expanded. I need someone who understands the pressure I am under, who moves in the same circles as me now. He paused, avoiding my eyes. Someone who can help me grow rather than holding me back. The words hit me like physical blows. Holding you back, I supported you through everything. I paid our bills when you had nothing. I introduced you to investors. I believed in your dream when nobody else did. And I will always be grateful for that, he said, in a tone that suggested anything but gratitude. But that was then. I need a partner who is my equal now, not someone I owe. Tears burned in my eyes as the full meaning of his words sank in. Is there someone else? Just tell me. After a moment of uncomfortable silence, Jake nodded. Megan. She is one of our investors. She understands my vision, my ambition. We connect on a different level. How long I managed to ask through the tightness in my throat. It does not matter. What matters is that I have been honest with myself, and now with you. This relationship has run its course. My mind raced through 1,000 memories. The nights I had stayed up helping him perfect his business plan. The vacations I had canceled because he needed to work. The countless times I had put his needs before my own, all leading to this moment of cold betrayal. You cannot just throw away 5 years because you met someone shinier and newer, I said, anger finally breaking through the shock. This is our home. We built this life together. Jake looked around the living room, his expression distant. Actually, Alexa, this is your home. Your name is on the mortgage. Remember, I have already found an apartment closer to the office. I will come by tomorrow to pack my things while you are at work. The casual cruelty of his planning stunned me. He had already found a new place, already decided to leave, without even attempting to work through our problems. He had been living a double life, while I had been desperately trying to save our relationship. So, that is it. After everything we have been through, you are just walking away. My voice cracked with emotion. I think it is for the best, he said, standing up. Clean break. You will thank me one day for not dragging this out. As if to punctuate his point, his phone buzzed with a text. He glanced at it, and a small smile crossed his lips before he quickly suppressed it. I should go. I have an early meeting tomorrow. Go where you live here, I said, the reality of the situation still not fully registering. I will stay at a hotel tonight. Easier that way. He moved toward the door, grabbing his keys from the bowl where he had just placed them. In that moment, watching him prepare to walk out the door, something broke inside me. Years of support, sacrifice, and love discarded so easily for someone who had entered his life after all the hard work was done. The injustice of it was overwhelming. Jake, I called as his hand touched the doorknob. He turned, perhaps expecting tears or pleading. Instead, I asked the question that had been forming in my mind. How much of your success do you think you would have had without me? He frowned, clearly irritated by the question. I built my company through hard work and innovation. Your support was appreciated, but let us not pretend I owe my success to you. The revisionist history was the final insult. Get out, I whispered, then louder. Get out of my house. Right now. Jake smirked, a cold expression I had never seen on his face before. Gladly. I will text you about picking up my things. The door closed behind him with a quiet click that somehow felt more final than a slam would have. I stood alone in our living room, the carefully prepared dinner still sitting on the table, candles burnt down to stubs. 5 years of my life, of love and sacrifice, ended in a 10-minute conversation. I sank to the floor and finally allowed myself to feel the full magnitude of the betrayal. Sobs racked my body as I curled up on the rug we had picked out together on our third anniversary. The pain was physical, a crushing weight on my chest that made it difficult to breathe. Every memory of our time together now tainted by the knowledge that he could discard me so easily when something better came along. As the initial shock began to fade, a different emotion started to take its place. Through my tears, my eyes fell on the framed photo of us that still sat on the mantel. In it, we stood in front of this very house the day we moved in. My house. The realization hit me suddenly. This was my home, purchased with my savings in my name only. The one thing Jake could not take from me when he decided I was no longer useful to him. In that moment of clarity, I reached for my phone and made a call that would change everything. Amanda, it is Alexa. I need legal advice. How quickly can you change the locks on a house? I woke up the next morning with swollen eyes and a strange sense of calm. After talking with my friend Amanda, who happened to be a real estate attorney, I had a clear understanding of my rights and Jake's complete lack of legal claim to my property. The house was entirely in my name, and Jake had never signed any formal rental agreement. Legally, he was essentially a guest I could ask to leave at any time. Acting on Amanda's advice, I called a locksmith who arrived within the hour. By noon, all the locks had been changed, and I had new keys in my hand. I also contacted a security company to install a basic alarm system, which they could do the next day. I was not taking any chances with Jake's potential reaction. The practical tasks helped me focus on something other than the emotional devastation. Each action I took to secure my home felt like reclaiming a small piece of myself that Jake had tried to diminish. I went through the house gathering Jake's belongings into boxes, careful to include everything of his, but nothing more. The expensive watches and designer clothes he had acquired since his business took off went into one box, his older possessions, that reminded me of the man I had fallen in love with, into another. I took the day off work, unable to face colleagues with my current emotional state. Around 2 in the afternoon, my phone buzzed with a text from Jake. Will come by around 6 to get my stuff. Leave the garage door open so I can load my car. The presumptuous tone of his message, with no question or even acknowledgement that he needed my permission to enter my home, reinforced that I was making the right decision. I replied simply, "The locks have been changed. Your belongings will be on the front porch at 6. Anything not collected today goes to donation tomorrow." His response was immediate and angry. "You changed the locks. You cannot do that. Half of what is in that house is mine." I felt a strange sense of power as I typed. "The house is legally mine alone. You have made no substantial contributions to the mortgage or bills. Your personal belongings will be outside at 6. Do not attempt to enter the property." A flurry of increasingly irate messages followed, culminating in threats of legal action. I forwarded these to Amanda, who assured me he had no case. His name was not on any documents related to the house, and he could not prove any financial stake in the property. The verbal agreement that he would contribute to household expenses, which he had barely honored anyway, provided him with no ownership rights. At precisely 6 o'clock, I placed the boxes of Jake's belongings on the front porch and retreated inside, locking the door. From the upstairs window, I watched as his car pulled into the driveway 20 minutes later. Jake stepped out, looking up at the house with a scowl before noticing the boxes. He stormed up to the front door and pounded on it loudly. "Alexa, open the door right now. We need to talk about this." I remained silent, watching from above, as he continued to bang on the door and shout, "This is ridiculous. You cannot just lock me out of my own home." After several minutes of unanswered knocking, he took out his phone, presumably to call or text me. I had silenced his number, determined not to engage in any further conversation that would only reopen emotional wounds. Finally, Jake seemed to realize I was not going to respond. He began loading the boxes into his car, muttering angrily to himself. As he worked, I noticed his movements becoming more frantic, his expression shifting from anger to something closer to panic. He pulled out his phone again, this time appearing to make several calls. Only after he had driven away did I check the messages he had left. Among the angry demands and accusations was a revealing admission the new investment round he had been counting on had fallen through. Megan, the investor he had left me for, had pulled her support from the company after discovering irregularities in their financial projections. A week passed, with no further contact from Jake. I threw myself into work, started therapy, and began the slow process of healing from the betrayal. I rearranged the furniture in the house, painted the bedroom a new color, and removed every trace of Jake from my living space. Each change felt like a step toward reclaiming my identity separate from the relationship that had defined so much of the past 5 years. Then, 10 days after our breakup, a mutual friend called me. "Have you heard about Jake?" he asked, his tone suggesting bad news. "No, and I do not want to," I replied automatically. "I think you might want to know this. His company is in serious trouble. That big investor pulled out and others followed. There are rumors he misrepresented some of their metrics to attract funding." He paused before adding, "And apparently, Megan broke things off when she realized the company was tanking. He lost his apartment too. Someone saw him sleeping in his car outside the office building yesterday." The news should have brought satisfaction, perhaps even vindication, but instead I felt a complex mixture of emotions. Part of me thought it was justice for how callously he had treated me after all my support. Another part remembered the earnest, grateful man he had once been, and felt sad for what he had become. I thanked my friend for the information and assured him I was doing fine. After hanging up, I sat in my garden thinking about everything that had happened. The irony was not lost on me. Jake had left me for someone he thought would elevate his status and success, only to lose everything, including the stable home I had provided. The next day, I received a text from an unknown number that I quickly realized was Jake using a friend's phone. "Alexa, I made a terrible mistake. Can we talk? I have nowhere to go, please?" I stared at the message for a long time, remembering all the nights I had lain awake, wondering what I had done wrong, all the times I had diminished myself to build him up, all the sacrifices I had made for someone who had walked away without a backward glance when something seemingly better came along. I deleted the message without responding. That weekend, I invited friends over for dinner for the first time since the breakup. As we sat in my dining room enjoying a meal I had cooked with music playing softly in the background, I realized I was laughing genuinely for the first time in months. My home felt like my sanctuary again, not a place of tension and pain. One of my friends raised her glass in a toast to Alexa, who deserves nothing but the best and is strong enough to demand it. As we clinked glasses, I felt something settle within me. The journey of healing would be long, but I had taken the first crucial steps. I had stood up for myself when it mattered most, protected what was mine, and refused to be diminished by someone who had failed to see my worth. 2 months after Jake left, I donated the few remaining items he had never collected to a local shelter. I replaced the sofa where we had spent countless evenings with a beautiful new one that was entirely my choice. I planted flowers in the garden that he had always vetoed as too high maintenance. Each small change was an affirmation of my independence and resilience. I learned that Jake eventually moved back to his hometown after his company collapsed completely. His grand ambitions and the success he had achieved through my support and connections had evaporated as quickly as they had materialized. He had reached out several more times, each message more desperate than the last, but I maintained my silence. Some bridges once burned cannot and should not be rebuilt. The greatest lesson I took from this painful chapter was the importance of valuing myself as much as I had valued him. I had given so much of myself, my resources, and my support without ensuring that the relationship remained balanced and reciprocal. Never again would I allow someone to take my generosity for granted or mistake my kindness for weakness. In the end, the house that Jake had tried to claim a stake in became the symbol of my fresh start. I made it fully mine in every way, from the color of the walls to the plants in the garden. And each night as I turned the key in the new locks, I reminded myself that I was worth far more than Jake had ever recognized, that I deserved a partner who would value me in prosperity as much as in hardship, and that sometimes the greatest act of self-love is simply closing the door on those who fail to appreciate the gift of your presence in their lives. Have you ever supported someone who later forgot your contributions to their success? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. Do not forget to subscribe to my channel for more real-life experiences and lessons learned the hard way. Hit that like button if this story resonated with you, and share it with someone who might need to be reminded of their worth in a relationship. Thank you for being here with me through this journey. And remember, sometimes the most painful endings lead to the most beautiful beginnings.